gender review at this position.
So under other business, I would like to talk about the May meetings. And then an update on the SAU meeting.
Update on what?
The SAU meeting?
Privilege of the floor.
Madam Chair, I'd like to welcome, we have three students from civics class. They'll be, the routine. They'll be taking notes of that. We welcome them.
You're welcome. Have fun. Be blessed.
And they're really tickled pink to be here,
Oh, I can see the smile.
especially on TV.
Okay. Approval of the minutes from April 6th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April.
Seconded by Phil. Okay. Do we also do the non-public minutes?
We vote on these first, and they go to non-public.
Okay. So we don't do that right now. Right, okay. The student report.
Point of order.
Yes.
You're gonna take a
Actually, you
vote.
have to vote on accepting the minutes right now.
Oh, we do. So we have to go into non-public?
No.
Okay. So do I hear a motion then to accept?
It was, yep.
Okay. All right.
All those in favor?
All those in favor, say
Aye.
aye. All those opposed? All those abstaining?
There is no student report, Madam Chair.
Okay. Then principal's report.
I'll be brief. We've come back from a well-deserved vacation, April, and we have a full agenda with a ton of events planned. We're selling tickets right now for the senior prom. They'll have their mandatory meeting next Wednesday, which the whole school will be taking part in. The prom will be the 15th, down in Concord, Marion. And then I will be planning, I am planning to celebrate 23 student athletes that played number 2 sports and held an academic average of 88. I'll be hosting a luncheon for them in the next couple of weeks, and I'll get back to you on the scholarship, on how that's going to work, and as we move forward to that. Graduation, as you know, will be out back on June 5th, 9 o'clock, right in the middle of the football field. John, Todd, myself will be working on the details on that. But we've come back and we're ready to go to finish up the year.
Thank you. I don't have to do anything else, do I?
No.
Thank you. So committee progress report, the teaching and learning.
Yes, we met on April 21st, and we did community reorganization. So motion was made to nominate myself as chairperson and Mr. McCormick, by Mr. McCormick. Thank you for nominating me, so here I am. Let's see.
We did do that.
There was a minor schedule change or calendar change that we discussed. That's later on, but I'll go through it now. After input from the faculty at the calendar meeting, Mr. Parsons requested that the January of 2022 in-service date be changed from the 21st to the 18th of that month. So midterms will be 4 consecutive days, and then a 4-day weekend for students. So that went on to the full board. Do we need to vote on that
Yes.
now? Okay. So does everybody understand what I'm saying? He shifted the dates a little bit so that the midterms would be 4 days in a row and not have a weekend in between. So this is just one in-service date that's moved from the 21st of January to the 18th of January of next year. And do I hear a motion to, we had a motion on that, to send it to the full board. So do we need another motion, Roger?
Yes, you do.
We do, all right. Do I hear a motion to accept that we move on to the full board for approval for tonight. Do we need to go into the specifics of those? No.
I think that everyone was here, Madam Chair,
Okay.
so.
All right, so do I hear a motion to approve those faculty handbook changes?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Yeah.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. The NEASC, Mr. Parsons reported that the report from them was shared with the entire faculty yesterday, or the day before that meeting. There will be 3 days in June that the faculty will work on written curriculum with the help of an expert. This written curriculum will be for K-12, and it will align elementary schools with the high school. So it's not a major change in curriculum, it's just a realignment so that everybody's on the same page.
Just a quick clarification. It is for high school
okay.
only, and then we will be working with the middle schools to align that a little bit too.
Okay.
So it's not a K-12
Thank you.
curriculum.
All right. All right. We approved the minutes from March and went into non-public. I think that's everything.
Your personnel.
Yes, so,
We'll do that now.
so this is just the progress report, right? So we went into non-public for personnel at the time.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, very well. All right, school operations.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We redid the committee, and Mr. Scoggins is chair, and Mr. Pettingill is vice chair.
Do you accept that, Roger?
I do.
Even though you weren't here?
We approved the minutes. Mrs. Walsh reported on unencumbered funds to date in the 2020-21 budget. Additional summer projects, Mr. Francis distributed a proposal for committee review for additional summer projects. This will be reviewed with the full board at their next meeting, which I believe is tonight. A motion was made to go into non-public for this purpose of personnel, and we did, and then we came out and we went home. We adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next item is handbook approval.
So you already approved that, so you're all set. You can move on to the next
We
one.
don't need to do that, okay. End of the year budget review.
So I brought Dan Rossner, our business administrator, to review with you the numbers that stand right now with the high school budget in regards to unreserved fund balance, possible numbers to retain, and to consider additional capital improvement projects if you'd like. So I'm going to have him take you through that.
We're projecting, taking into account certain expenses that haven't been expended yet and projects that have approved at prior meetings. There is a projected fund balance of $499,000. That would be after a further vote. If you want to retain, as been the practice for the last few years since the authorization was granted, this board has chosen to retain the maximum amount available, which would this year would be approximately $292,000. So with that, what I want to be clear about is that that is after last year's fund balance was voted to be returned in the form of a revenue for next year to offset taxes. So essentially, even though in prior years there's been a retained fund balance, the board has already committed to liquidate any prior year's fund balance that had been retained into the revenue for next year. It's a little bit different than this conversation is a little bit different than we've had in the past. But the capacity is there to retain once again and still return those other funds from prior years. If that were the situation, if the board voted to do that, retain again, there would be a $499,000 fund balance as of this point in time. I can go through the details on the right, which really sum up where the accounts come from. The single largest contributor to this fund balance are changes in special ed needs. There are a variety of other costs that go up and down throughout the year, as we know. Health insurance has a savings this year. That's primarily due to underutilization of the employer-funded deductible portion of the employee's health care coverage. That's the single greatest to the health care insurance category, but the rest of the details are in the column on the right. The column on the left starts with the balance as of now and projects some expenses that still need to be taken into account. But I'd be happy to answer any questions about these numbers or a process for moving forward. Thank you. Sure, Sam?
Yeah, thank you. On the left-hand side, Dan, adjustments for approved not entered, 581,000.
Yes. So as of this time, at your April 6th meeting, you approved approximately $887,000 in projects,
Yes.
facility-related projects. The facilities team is still working on finalizing some of those details, so approximately $300,000 of that $887 has been encumbered so far, and the other $587 has been approved by this board but not encumbered yet, so that's why it doesn't track into our financial software
Okay.
until the purchase order encumbering the funds happens, which is why I make the adjustment as approved, not entered.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, not encumbered yet.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, Phil?
That 581 will have to be expended by June 30th, is that correct?
It'll have to be encumbered by June 30th.
Okay.
So if a project is going to happen in July, we'll enter the purchase order to encumber the funds, and that is satisfactory for audit purposes. Yeah.
Okay. I'm good.
I think you're doing a great job. You know, well, yeah. So, I just want to say thanks for everything that's gone on in our place.
Yes.
It's been the mood in the office, the morale, we haven't had bad morale, but with just the improvements that have been made so far, it's just really been great for our team over there at the SAU office, and we thank you so much.
Yeah, I had a question, Dan, about, you had mentioned there was a maximum amount we can retain. What is that? How does that work?
So the language in the RSA is, when the RSA has been adjusted, but at the time that it was adopted by the Pebby Baker District, you were allowed to retain up to 2.5% of the net assessment of the district. And that works out this year to $292,000.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Just food for thought, when the RSA was changed, it was increased up to 5%. So those districts, including, for example, the Plymouth School District that adopted that language this year, they can retain up to 5%. So if you wanted to change it from 2.5% to 5% of your allowed amount to retain, you would need to reauthorize it. Without reauthorizing it by vote of the public, it stays at the 2.5% that was approved when you went through that process.
Thank you.
And that would need to go to a vote.
Yeah.
At the, okay.
Exactly.
It would be a warrant article.
It would be one, exactly.
So do we need to vote on something at this moment?
No, you don't. You could wait you could vote to retain fund balance now. You can wait right up through the end of the fiscal year. You could wait till your June meeting or your later meeting in May to have a vote if you wanted to vote to retain fund balance this year as well.
Any discussion about that?
Wouldn't it make sense to wait a while? I mean, it's so fluid. These numbers could change considerably, I would think, in the next 60 days.
Well, some of the accounts too, I have, like athletics, I'm still in athletics, graduation, you'll see a lot of things I haven't done the bills. I'm not going to overstep here, but I've taken into account the athletics piece of it and the co-curricular piece being paid out. That's item number 2 on the adjustments. And so I don't see a lot of change other than things that are, other than the things that are on the left, which are not encumbered yet. I mean, if suddenly there's a new order for 100 computers or something like that, or something significant, I wouldn't project a large change from this number at this point in time.
There's no harm in waiting.
Yeah,
So
but
I mean,
you absolutely have the flexibility to wait. There's no rush.
Remind me again, what part goes back to offset taxes? What is that part called?
So what's called the unretained fund balance is what becomes a revenue next year towards the fall 2021 tax bill, right? You have a whole long list of revenues, Medicaid revenue and all these revenues that, whatever the unretained fund balance is, last year the number for this district was approximately $616,000. This year, what's definitely going back in the form of unretained fund balance is last year's retained fund. You committed last year's retained money to be unretained this year. So any additional money, so let's say the fiscal year ended today, and we paid out all these things in the adjustment column on the left, and there was, approximately $792,000 left over. That would be the unretained, and you didn't take any action on retaining anything. You'd have that 792 plus the 200 and change from last year. So it would be significant. But you've already, I'm sorry if it sounds.
And then the following year, we know more. We wouldn't have the taxes would go way up.
The taxes would go up because you would have had such a significant credit or a revenue in the fall of 2021. So when you looked at a comparison to 2022-23 year, it would be significantly higher. So if this entire budget availability was spent, let's look at it the other way. I'm telling you, you have approximately $499,000 of flexibility if you were to retain the maximum amount available again. You spend that whole $499, hypothetically, and there's still last year's retained fund balance that's unretained this year because it was committed by the board during the budget season. So there'd still be the say the number was $270,000 going back as a revenue this fall. A much lower number than last fall.
But by retaining some this year, it will help keep taxes more level,
It's definitely a tool for
rather than
reducing the size of the curves, if you will, in the fund balance that becomes a revenue and the impact on taxation.
Any more discussion?
When we do vote, before we do vote, I would expect that we'll hear your recommendation as to what the amount should be.
I'd be happy to make a recommendation, but I would hope to understand your designs on additional spending first.
No, I wasn't looking for it tonight.
Yeah.
But
I'll be back at your first meeting in June to have this conversation again. We just really wanted to
We always
lay out.
front load all of this because there's a lot of information.
There's a lot of
to
information.
process.
Want to give you time to process it. Once again, I hope people know that if they want further clarification between now and the next meeting, feel free to reach out to me, the SAU office anytime, phone, email, whatever. Happy to talk it through with you. Yes, Brian?
Clarification on the left-hand side. Unexpended balance per Alio.
Yeah.
What is Alio?
So, that's a great question. Alio is our financial management software. So, if we were to look at the 29 pages that make up the report, that would be the bottom line, and what I'm just sort of doing is cross-checking myself that of that 29 pages, I'm boiling it down to 25 items that come within $10,000 of the number. So, it's what my first superintendent in the SAU would call a common sense test.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Dan, at some point in the future, might be good to have what would be an advantage of, or a disadvantage of going out with a warrant article to raise it to 5% from 2.5%. I mean, what are the pluses and minuses of doing something like that? Just so if the board ever wanted to consider that in the future, we'd have an idea of it. And also how many districts do that? I mean, how many districts have 2.5 versus that new 5? That type of thing. And not for tonight, I'm just saying in the future, the next year or two, it might be something we want to explore. Imagine it gives you more flexibility, but there's some downsides to it too, probably.
I would say the only downside that strikes me would be the risk that at your first deliberative session, you could have to take an amendment from the floor to reduce the number to 1%. And that would handicap you.
And you can reduce it, people could reduce it to zero too.
They could. Right. I absolutely see the benefit and the flexibility, because it's not that you have to do 5% or you have to do 2.5%. You have the authority to do that up to that number.
Right.
Right? So whether it's the maximum, it's your discretion what number to retain up to the cap. But if that cap were to be reduced by a motion from the floor, it would limit your flexibility.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other discussion? So wait till June?
I'll throw one other thing out there for you, just so you're aware. When they changed it from 2.5% to 5%, they also removed all the statutory restrictions on the use of the funds. Prior, it could only be used for a certain set of prescribed uses, unanticipated special ed costs, building emergency, things like that. Those restrictions have all been removed from the RSA. All you have to do is have your posted hearing that you're going to use the funds, and then report to the state that you did use the funds. But there's no language about its allowable uses anymore.
That's a big change.
Thank you. Okay. So, capital improvement plan summer projects.
So John Francis is here with us again, our facilities director. We talked about this at committee a little bit with some of the additional CIP projects that you may want to consider.
Yeah, probably is to let that be some people.
Previous one. I had to keep everything.
I get one. Thank you, John.
So these are the next round that we have to talk about tonight with you guys. So I'll just kind of go down through them, and then questions from you guys can be forthcoming. One of the next ones we'd like to do is the side gate for the north wing. This will be an exact style gate that we're running down at Merrill Street, and at the top of the athletic fields will be placed over the north wing. There's an access road that goes around, all the way around the backside of the football field. So we'd like to get rid of the ball and chain out there and add an electronic gate, which has worked out really well for police and fire and athletics. Next one is resurfacing the tennis court and basketball court. That's something that would have come up in this coming fall's budget is when it's due. With the extra funds that we have this year, I'm recommending that we do them now. And that's resurfacing the tennis court and basketball court. And for both those courts. The next one down, I'm going to talk about the football scoreboard and the baseball field hockey scoreboard. I'd like to make a change there and just combine all three of those scoreboards. What I'm finding is the football scoreboard numbers are coming in significantly higher than the 15. We're almost in the low 20s. So what I'd like to do is balance off the rest with either a baseball or field hockey scoreboard, and then we'll pick up another one in another year if you so choose to do that tonight. The next one on the line is theater lights. Right now the theater lights are, well, I think they came over.
Ancient.
They're ancient.
Ancient.
They're
Before me.
incandescent, and I'd like to upgrade them into LED, putting LED lights in on the stage lighting controls. And then the last one is bathrooms and locker rooms renovations. And we're going to be working with an architect on this as well, because we want to get a better feel for what is it that, how do we want to rebuild our locker rooms if we choose to do the locker rooms. And the next big piece is redoing our bathrooms and how we're going to address our bathrooms with gender neutral bathrooms. And then how does that affect my device per student numbers? So I'm gonna work with an architect on how we can balance all that off. So right now, I've just slotted in a lump sum of the 400, but, I mean, I have way more bathrooms than I have. I have way more bathrooms to renovate like this than I have money. So, but this will give us a good feel for how we begin to create this balance. We started this process when we renovated the CTC Center. All the bathrooms that we put in are gender neutral bathrooms. It means anybody can use them. We like them for many reasons. That plus, when we're having multiple kids in the bathrooms, that's usually when we get into issues between either vaping and or.
Yeah, well, we are looking to eliminate more of the multi-stall bathrooms. They're old, they have to be renovated anyways. They're the ones by the stairs where there's just multiple stalls where more kids, more than one kid can go in. So we can revamp those to be single stalls with a little bit more room. They tend to be much cleaner, and we have less behavioral issues in the, obviously in the single stalls where we wouldn't see as much behaviors or damage to property.
The last time we did them was 2000. That's what we done the last time, so they
20?
yeah.
Yes, we did.
John, on the scoreboard, I know the football scoreboard is really old and you can't get parts for it. You need.
It's original,
Right.
1969.
Right, that makes sense. Now I've kind of wondered this, do we need two scoreboards for baseball and field hockey, or can they be combined into one?
We did talk about that.
Yeah.
And so the only con that I see in that is I'd have to relocate
Yeah.
where it is. And right now I've got both those stanchions are in place, both those footings are cemented in and set.
Okay.
So what we're looking at is what's my cost of moving them and in doing one, am I gonna spend the same amount of money if I left these two?
Yeah.
So we did look at that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Question. Seems to me way back, there was a point where there was advertising on the scoreboards and maybe from a particular company and we get the scoreboards from them.
Yeah,
I think we did away with that.
we did. And they don't do it anymore.
It was Dasani and Coca-Cola.
Yeah, I mean, that, a lot of times you'll see our school logo in
Yeah.
that spot where it was.
Yeah.
Ernest, did I hear correctly, now that you've found that the cost for the football scoreboard were going to be higher than what you had in?
So when I had budgeted, it's in the logo.
Right, exactly. So
I'm saying if I could-
one of the two in this cycle, is that correct?
One of, either two of the three or one of the three, because we're talking about three scoreboards. Baseball,
Okay.
field hockey are two,
Okay.
and then football is one. So I'm dealing with three different scoreboards. The football scoreboard is probably, it's the largest, it's big,
What's in the worst shape?
the football.
Football's the oldest.
69,
Yeah,
71.
that's the oldest.
The other ones I did.
We did them together, too.
Approximately 15, 14 years.
The baseball and the field hockey
Yeah.
went together.
So we can look at just doing the football scoreboard, and we've got baseball and the field hockey, or combine that into one scoreboard like Sam's talking about, and run both field hockey and baseball, because that can be done. It's a matter of relocating it so that it works for both fields.
So what is the price you'd be looking at, as best you know it, for the football scoreboard now?
Somewhere between 21 and 25. And it's basically very similar to what's there now, just, as far as the terminology that we have up there. Because you can spend upwards of $150,000 on these boards now with the graphics and
What
everything.
about the camp score?
Yeah. Phil wants
The
to
big
jump on
screen
Tron.
up there so the
Phil
kids
wants
can
to jump on Tron, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You all right with that, Maury?
Could hear it from my house.
I think the style that we have is fitting for the field.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be far from that.
So a possibility would be doing the football scoreboard and then one of the other scoreboards?
Possibly one of the other ones.
Can I just suggest, if you have to choose, to go for field hockey, since it'd be a little bit of,
Yeah,
it's a girls' sport
yeah, and that's-
versus two boys' sport.
And that's why I was doing both, because I already knew if I did one and not the other, it just starts that process, so. That's why Sam's idea was good too. That as well.
Yeah, well, they're different seasons, so they're not going to be put at the same time.
No, it's just,
Where do you put it?
yep, because when we were looking at it, and Jimmy was with me, that was one of the questions that we talked about. But then, like I said, it's a matter of relocating the power and the footings and everything to hold those signs up, so. Anyway, but yes, we can do that.
Any other discussion? Questions?
Thank you, John.
So we are looking for approval tonight from the subcommittee. If you're comfortable with moving forward with that or specifying what scoreboards would like to put in place.
So will we need a motion?
To approve the projects with the amendment of the football scoreboard.
So I would like to make a motion to approve the slate of items that John just presented, merging the scoreboard entries. So there's one scoreboard entry with a total of $27,000, with the priority of the scoreboards being football, field hockey if possible, and baseball.
Second.
Okay, other business?
Well, you have to.
You guys want to vote? Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstained? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Um,
Yep. Johnny has one.
Well, I'm looking at the unreserved fund balance that Dan gave me. I'm gonna call it 500,000. And I'm looking at my number and we're well over that. I wonder if I modify the bathroom locker room number down to meet your amount so that I'm not overspending your.
So my number includes retention of the full 292 available.
Okay.
And also, what I would suggest is a conservative, that's a conservative number for me. So I think you should, if that's the number that you think is the right number for the facilities to have in the right way, as I know how well, we all know the quality of projects you do.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with you staying with that number, and you and I work together to get everything encumbered properly before the early June board meeting.
Okay.
And then I can provide them with a better report out on potential retained fund balance.
Okay. No, I was just seeing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question.
Significant changes in numbers.
I appreciate the question, but I think we can figure it out.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so I'll do this.
Okay, we're already on it.
All right, other business?
I would just like to propose, instead of subcommittee meetings on May 18th, that we have a regular board meeting on that date, as well as a regular board meeting at the beginning of June as scheduled, just because we have a ton of business to do between now and the beginning of June. So I was wondering if you can approve that and move the May 18th subcommittee meetings to a board meeting.
We need a motion for that.
Yep. To
Go on, I'll make the motion. Second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay. So May 18th will be a regular meeting. Okay.
I just want to do it.
All those in favor?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to get us, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstained?
And then, just to remind you that the SAU meeting is on that Thursday, May 20th, so if you can make it, that would be great. And that will be right here. And once we get an RSVP, we'll decide which room it's in for spacing.
What time?
It will be at 6. Yep. Yep. then Michelle from my office will send something out to see who can make it.
Board member concerns? Privilege of the floor?
Do you guys have any?